Now that I've logged over 100 hours in the Outer Worlds 2 and I've beaten the game with 3 different builds, I've got a really good understanding of the best way to build your character for a first playthrough. This video will help you select all of the options that are going to give you the most out of your playthrough. By running this build, or at least a similar variation of it, it will mean that you miss out on the least amount of things, whilst almost always having a way to interact with every object, answer every question, and solve every problem you encounter throughout your playthrough. So let's jump straight into it and take a look at the backgrounds on offer to you. Firstly, going from top to bottom, ex-convict, ironically, is the best background to pick. Simple as that. At multiple points throughout the main story, it allowed me to effectively brute force my way through checks that would have otherwise required me to have damn near maxed out skills. This by far has the most interaction and the most value of all backgrounds. Professor and Renegade are tied for second. I think Professor can probably be used more often than ex-convict, but ex-convict is more powerful. Usually when Professor is offered, just having something like a low amount of science or the brilliant trait will also achieve the same result, whereas ex-convict can help you skip some otherwise really tough checks. And as I say, Renegade is in a very similar position to Professor. Next up, we've got Lawbringer and Gambler, both of which are almost purely just conversational. They aren't that great. And then Roustabout, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly. Roustabout is basically the troll option. This is ironically what I went for my first playthrough because it sounded quite fun. And every time it pops up and you can use it, it's usually not great. Sometimes it even detriments you. It's just bad. It's funny, but bad. Next up for the best traits to pick, Lucky is an absolute no-brainer. I would advise 100% of people to pick Lucky on your first run. A straight-up 5% increase to your crit chance is already very strong, but then when it says that certain opportunities are just accessible to you, exactly what I said about ex-convict applies here too. Like, I was trying to mix a cure for someone to stop them from dying, and I didn't know medicine, and it required something like a 6 or an 8 in medicine to pass the skill check. Or it said you can just use your lucky perk and chuck a load of random stuff in a flask, and hey presto, I saved his life. And this example worked in a surprising amount of situations. It's so powerful. Another few great choices are Brawny, not because of the sliding and sprinting to knock people down, but because it will allow you to brute force open a lot of things that you'd usually need something like engineering or lockpicking to enter. So if you're not planning on taking engineering, Brawny is a great second trait. Brilliant is also cool because of the couple of extra skill points, but in everyday use it clashes quite a lot with Lucky, and 2 skill points is a drop in the ocean compared to how many points you need for your skills. So instead, I would say if you don't want to take Brawny for your second option, Heroic, Innovative, and Nimble are all pretty good second options. So of the 3, I'd say Innovative is going to be useful in the most scenarios, but any of the 3 are going to be pretty good for you. Suave and Witty both have such minor benefits that you really don't need to consider them at all. They basically just save you some money here and there. And Resilience is a crazy good second choice if you are planning on playing a high difficulty playthrough. A second life in every single combat is huge. So TLDR for traits, absolutely pick Lucky as your first, then take Brawny if you're not planning on going for engineering. Otherwise, take Innovative for a low difficulty playthrough or Resilience for a high difficulty playthrough. Simple as that. And yes, I do advise taking 2 positive traits and then selecting Dumb as your negative. This actually is a sneak peek into my next video here, the power of Dumb. It really cannot be understated. Not only does it unlock a bunch of conversational and environmental options that can really help you out in some situations, like genuinely, sometimes picking the dumb option is the best thing to do. But also, with having 12 skills, in a game where all of them can reach rank 20, with not that many skill points to spend, this means that you will absolutely be spreading yourself too thin. But taking Dumb will limit them options, and it will actually help you make a more defined and refined build. Now you know about the traits and the backgrounds, let's move on to skills. This will absolutely be the shortest part of the video because it's very hard for me to tell you what skills you should take. This is your character. Every skill is great in its own way, so this, I feel, is something that you should pick to really make the playthrough your own. What I can do, however, is give you a few pointers. For instance, as I alluded to earlier, if you want Brawny to be one of your traits, don't invest heavily into engineering, as there is quite a lot of situational overlap between the two, and engineering will then become slightly less useful than it would be on its own if you were to pick a different trait. And the same thing applies with Science and Brilliant or Lucky. If you have taken Brilliant or Lucky, I would actually advise not going down the route of Science, because there's again quite a lot of overlap with skill checks and choices and dialogue options. And finally, unless you are absolutely set on them, the two skills that I would pretty much always avoid without a shadow of a doubt are Melee and Explosives. Their best perks and the companion that synergizes with them the best, Arza, all don't become very good until right at the end of the game. And by that point, it's just a bit of a waste, because you're spending the rest of the game limiting your fun and your interactions with so many other things, just for a bit of a payoff at the end of the game. You'd be much better off taking something like lockpicking or Science. And on the flip side, if I had to give you a top two that I would pretty much always pick no matter what, firstly, absolutely, it would be Speech. This one unlocks so many doors and has some really powerful perks as well, and lockpicking for quite similar reasons. But apart from that, pick whatever looks the most fun to you. So next up, now the longest part of the video, definitely the most worthwhile as well, I'm going to talk you through each perk category one at a time and give you my top 1 or 2 recommendations for each category for you to write down so that you know what to take throughout your playthrough, along with which categories you should just fully stay away from because they're garbage. Now, perks will obviously depend on which skills you have chosen, so as I say, I'll give you a top few and a few other tips and recommendations from each category. And firstly, we'll start with the neutral category. The absolute first perk in the game you should take is Trophy Hunter. Being able to stack crit chance is huge, and if you combine this with the lucky trait and then a crit rate helm, which are in abundance, then already, without any other source, you've already got a plus 30% increased crit chance against any strong enemies, so that's both leaders and bosses, all of that at level 2. The other neutral perks I would pick, firstly, if you are going for a particularly evil roleplay playthrough, go for Psychopath and Serial Killer, and if you are, take them as early on as you possibly can, because this will permanently increase your maximum health infinitely. This is absolutely incredible. Or if you are taking the role of a tank for your team, then go with the incredible Bullet Shield and Shrug It Off combo. This is another very, very powerful combo. Apart from that, if you aren't planning on doing either of these things, just take Trophy Hunter and ignore all of the other neutral perks. For engineering, if you are speccing heavily into engineering, then Tinkerer and Master Armorer are both amazing, with a huge increase in damage to your modded weapons, plus an additional armor mod slot at rank 20. However, if you're only dabbling in engineering, then I would just recommend grabbing Makeshift Armorer at rank 3. Makeshift Armorer I've talked about in a few perk videos. This is one of the best perks in the game. Basically, if you craft lots and lots of things, you can get thousands of armor in the late game, and become basically invincible until your enemies deal enough damage to start stripping it away again. Next up, for explosives, most of the early explosives perks are bad, like 10% damage here, 20% damage there. They're quite negligible. You don't really have anything juicy or stackable like Tinkerer, so I would just grab Secret Recipe and Demolitionist combo if you are wanting to max out explosives, they are incredible. However, if you aren't going to be a heavy explosives user, then just ignore this category completely and save your perk points for elsewhere where they're going to be far better spent. Guns is an interesting category because there is loads of perks, but quite a few of them also require you to be spec'd heavily into another skill too. Commando is a bit of a waste in my opinion, but there are definitely some situations where I wished I had a fourth weapon, but not enough to waste an entire perk point on it. And the same goes for all of the early gun perks. They all increase damage or abilities in specific ways, but they're usually for specific weapon types, and ideally you don't want to be limiting yourself in a game where variety really matters. Now, I know this is a ridiculous investment, but Lucky Strikes is absolutely insane. You do have to max out both guns and melee for it, but if you are considering this and you do want to go down a full powerhouse route, take Crabble Rancher and focus on marksman rifles, pistols and shotguns throughout your playthrough so that you get that insane critical hit chance bonus, and then you can trigger Lucky Strikes even more often. And the third and final gun perk that I love is Trick Shot, for two reasons. One of them we'll talk about later because it synergizes with another perk in a different category, but also it only requires a 1 in guns and observations, and it means that all of your weak spot hits are effectively hitting twice. This is amazing when used in conjunction with the time slow for basically guaranteed weak spot hits. Now, for hacking, most of them are actually auto mech specific. I don't like perks that only work against one enemy type. In fact, the only perk I could even remotely advise is restricted access, because there are some really powerful items that you can get access to in the restricted inventory of vending machines, but even then it's quite limited as it doesn't apply to any other type of vendor or merchant. So hacking itself is a great skill, but most of its perks, not that good. Next up, there are 3 good leadership perks. 2 of them are only worth going if you are going all in on leadership. That is camaraderie and on your feet. They are a fantastic combo. Being able to revive your companions at range whilst simultaneously granting damage resistance, along with the fact that damage you take no longer interrupts you, means that if you are going for a companion heavy build, this is a no-brainer. This is so powerful. Apart from that, however, if you don't want to pump loads and loads of points into leadership, the one perk I would grab from here is Inspiring Commander. This can be a really worthwhile reason to put just 1 point into leadership, because companion abilities are the most powerful thing about your allies, so being able to recharge them even faster is incredibly valuable. As for medicine, you can ignore anything that's going to give you more food and drink or more inhaler charges. Things like this, you are going to get so many throughout your playthrough that again, it's not worth wasting your valuable, precious perk points on. Farm Enthusiast, however, is amazing. This means you can equip a second primer and use, or a third, depending on your other abilities, and then you can use even more primers in conjunction, making your inhaler crazy powerful. It also reduces the toxicity that you receive by 25%, and only requires 2 points in medical. Next up, Nature's Friend sounds so much fun until you see the fact that it only lasts for 10 seconds. Then if you do invest heavily into medicine, you can unlock Nature's Best Friend, which makes it permanent, which sounds amazing at first, like, oh, I now have a pet. But they still don't follow you, they still stay at their location. So 2 perk points for 1 pet that will not follow you anywhere. Huge waste of time in my opinion. However, the one other medicine perk I would suggest is Crash Recovery. This is insane. It means that if you do accidentally overuse your inhaler and you start crashing, you're now potentially going to be healing even more than by using the inhaler itself, because you are now gaining 2% of your max HP regen every second for the whole duration whilst you're crashing. If you combine this with a tank build, you're going to become unstoppable. Now on to melee. They're all above average perks, but they're in a category that isn't particularly important. As I say, fighting in melee in this game is a big risk, so really you would have to take all of them for it to be worth it. You'll need every single damage percent increase, all of the survivability and the lifesteal and stuff, just to compare to the damage of like rocket launchers and plasma weapons in the late game. So I'm not saying that the melee category is bad, but in reality, if you do want to do it, you're going to have to use over half your perk points just to make it properly worth it, and then along with things like Bullet Shield. Next up, the only observation perk I would take is Keen Observer, and this is the other reason that I said to go for Trick Shot earlier, so you can unlock Keen Observer. If you combine this with a silenced weapon, it makes stealth so easy and so fun. On to the 3 final categories now. I was gutted by the science category. I expected this to be so overpowered because of the game that we are playing, but most of them are so niche, either buffing one specific gadget or one specific damage type. If you do find that there is a gadget you use all the time, then absolutely grab one of the corresponding perks. But apart from that, the only 2 that I could really recommend are Rapid Recharge, as long as you are someone who remembers to use your gadget a lot. I suck at remembering to do this, so this perk is bad for me. But if you remember, this perk is very good for you. And then absolutely Contingency Screen. This is going to give you a free automatic use of your shield if you ever get caught out in combat. That has saved my life on more than one occasion. Now on to Stealth. Every stealth perk, sorry, it's called Sneak in this game, isn't it? Every sneak perk, apart from Assassin, is amazing. It just depends, again, like Melee, how heavily you want to invest into this category. Light Step is goated. Might be the best perk in the game. You just never set off traps again, what the fuck? That is so good. And the rest of them are great, again, if that's your playstyle. If you only want to pick one, and you don't want to go too heavy into Sneak, then Ghost is the one you want. A free camouflage every few minutes will save you from being detected in so many situations where you might have been otherwise spotted. But then, as I say, if you want to invest heavily into it, Light Step is just phenomenal. And finally, for Speech, it's one of the best skills with one of the worst perk sets. It's mostly about getting more for your money and for lying. And I invested heavily into lying and then really regretted it. My Speech is rank 15, and I got every single lying perk, and it never works. Everyone always sees through my lies. There's just no point to it. It sucks. The 2 great Speech perks are Tall Tale Teller, because this will give you a 20% increase to damage, just straight up. This is huge. A fifth more damage from all sources is crazy. And then Space Ranger for the exact same reason, an additional 2.5% damage for every point in Speech, which means if you max Speech out, just with these 2 combined, you have 70% more damage. That is crazy. And that is it, my friends. That's how to make the best character for your first playthrough, just so that you can interact with as much of the game as possible and really enjoy it to its fullest extent. So if you enjoyed, if you learned at least one thing, please consider subscribing to the channel. And for all those that do, thank you so much. And all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.